What's poppin', Rockstars? My name is MT, and Loki Season 1 is over, leaving us all doomed back to our painful, empty, Mobius-less existences, which is not fun. It's been hard without my favorite mustached man. But not before introducing the MCU's next major pain, Major's Kang, the next Marvel big bad that we learn about through this forever bored and alone variant called He Who Remains in the Loki finale. You know, the one Kang that beat out all the other inferior Kangs in Kang of Duty Warzone for the MCU Entertainment Console. But if there's one thing that Big Daddy Kang taught us is that multiverse pimpin' ain't easy. And now that Sylvia's caused that pimp to go limp in that He Who Remains is now a Kangel in God's kingdom, the mad MCU multiverse is about to bring that Kang in the form of an infinite number of different versions of Kang the Conqueror, all now wanting a piece of that newly freed multiversal real estate. But while many of us OGs of the Kang gang already know all about this time-traveling control freak of a blueberry, there are many of our brothers and sisters and gender label resistors of the Speculation Nation who have no idea who Kang even is, or the different identities that Kang has embodied over his 60 years in the Marvel Comics. Because good God, does comic Kang sure love him a good wardrobe change. But fear not, my nerd babies, I am here to give you the lowdown on Earthang Kang, but also all those main Kang personas of note and how they could show up in upcoming MCU Phase 4 titles. So, without further ado, let's get Kangerous! The man who would become Kang the Conqueror was originally just some Earth nerd named Nathaniel Richards from the year 3000. And since not much has changed and they live underwater, it's no surprise that Nathaniel Richards would decide to copy the Jonas Brothers and build his ass a time machine, specifically to go do hood-rat stuff in ancient Egypt. And by the way, if you're wondering why Kang Nathaniel Richards has the same name as Mr. Fantastic's dad, it's mostly because he was straight up named after Mr. Fantastic's dad, because that became Nathaniel's great fantastic grandpappy ancestor, who was also a time traveler. Go figure. And Nathaniel Kang decides to time travel to the Wi-Fi-less ancient Egypt and use all of his fancy cool future technology to completely take Egypt over as its ruler, becoming the infamous villain Pharaoh Rama-Tut, because that's what good time tourists do. Just take over Egypt. Why not? Actually, Kang's first ever introduction to the Marvel Comics was as this super secret time traveler Rama-Tut when he first lured the Fantastic Four to fight him in the past in Fantastic Four issue number 19. Now, out of all of Kang's many Kang-sonas and variants, this is one that we're definitely going to be seeing in the MCU very soon. Not just because Kang's time as Rama-Tut is such a vital part of Nathaniel's evolution towards becoming a time-traveling conqueror, but mostly because the Kang-sona of Rama-Tut is also very much an iconic villain in Marvel Comics history, having been introduced near the very start of the Fantastic Four comics. This all being said, if we're talking about a Marvel villain whose identity is tied to them being a pharaoh from ancient Egypt, the most probable MCU project that we would see a Rama-Tut variant being in is of course Chloe Zhao's upcoming Eternals film. I mean, the Eternals movie is set over the course of thousands of years, with the Eternals protecting humanity throughout Earth's history. So I can imagine these celestial loving brown nosers having an altercation or two with a big jerk of an Egyptian pharaoh who's not actually Egyptian. So I definitely expect to see Jonathan Majors rocking some major Moses sandals in a surprise Kang cameo this November in Eternals. But thank you so much to Honeygain for sponsoring this video. Honeygain is an app that makes you cash just by keeping it running in the background, and they're not promising to pay all your bills or anything, but it's enough money to cover small purchases like your Netflix subscription every month, or maybe just buy you and a buddy some tasty beverages like some Kang Tang. It's delicious. Okay, here's how it all works. Install Honeygain on your device, and that's it. You're making money just by sharing your internet connection. And the app doesn't collect any personal data. Instead, it uses the internet to gather bits of information from the web, like the best prices on airline tickets. And Honeygain doesn't have any effect on your internet experience and doesn't require any permissions on your device. And whenever you have $20, withdraw your money from PayPal or Bitcoin and go buy your buddy that beverage, because he's thirsty. We all thirsty. And if you want to increase your earnings, refer a friend and get a sweet little 10% recurring commission of his earnings. So use code NEWROCKSTARS when signing up, or click the link in the description down below and get $5 added to your account today. But anyways, what also makes a Rama-Tut cameo within the MCU extremely likely is this Sphinx within the Void from episode 5 of Loki, because Kang the Conqueror has used a whole ass Sphinx as a time machine in the comics before. Like that Sphinx that we saw in episode 5 could have belonged to a Rama-Tut Kang variant in the past that He Who Remains defeated in the Gulag. Moving on, the Fantastic Four kick King Nathaniel's butt so hard that he runs off in his time machine like a little bitch, only for Rama-Tut to run into another one of his potential ancestors, Victor Voss called Doom, who inspires him to stop cosplaying as Rama-Tut and dress up as the Scarlet Centurion instead, which is basically just different shit, same asshole. Now, while the main Kang from the comics didn't spend a whole lot of time as the Scarlet Centurion, there does exist an alternate reality version of Kang Scarlet Centurion that frequently fought with the Squadron Supreme. And since the Squadron Supreme are basically Marvel's variants of DC Comics Justice League, I can see Marvel Studios having a Kang Scarlet Centurion variant pop up in universe-hopping projects like Multiverse of Madness, What If, or Quantumania fighting his Squadron Supreme nemesises, because everybody knows that Squadron Supreme is coming. They're inevitable for the MCU. But anyways, after his brief stint as the Scarlet Centurion ended in absolute failure, Egyptian Nathaniel with the sandals tries to go back to the year 3000, but accidentally goes to Earth in the year 4000 instead of 3000 and finds a bunch of barbaric morons in a war-torn society ripe for the taking. So naturally, Rama-Tut Kang was like, you know what? It's not Egypt, but I can work with this. And it was at that moment when Nathaniel Richards decided to abandon all sense of fashion completely and fashioned himself his iconic green and purple battlesuit with the blueberry face and conquered the barbaric 40th century as his first ever conquest as Kang the Conqueror. And from then on, Kang would go on to conquer various eras of the Marvel Universe. But during his time as Kang, he has inevitably taken on various identities and spawned countless variants of himself, because of course he did. So much so that there was legit enough of him to form an interdimensional Council of Kang, which is of course what was alluded to by He Who Remains in the Loki season finale. All those Kangs coming together to work together, but you know, since they're all assholes, that doesn't really work out. But yeah, I'm just gonna quickly list off some of the most important Kang sonas that are probably most likely going to show up in Phase 4 of the MCU. Starting with Iron Lad of the Young Avengers. Yes, Iron Lad is actually Kang the Conqueror, but a 16-year-old version of Nathaniel who tries to reject his future as Kang the Conqueror by traveling to the present day to be a hero. Like adult Kang the Conqueror tries to go back in time to try to convince his younger self to start conquering earlier, and his younger self is like, nah, you just showed me the highlight reel of blood, destruction, and pillaging and death. I want to go be a good guy. And with the MCU clearly setting up the Young Avengers with their latest titles like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki and everything, definitely expect a young Iron Lad Kang to play a role in Quantumania alongside Scott Lang's daughter Cassie, who of course becomes the Young Avenger stature and a love interest for young Kang Iron Lad. And of course we cannot forget to talk about Immortus, one of the most unique Kangs of all, mostly because in the entire Marvel multiverse there is only one version of Immortus, just one. Like there is no Immortus variant. Immortus is a version of Kang that gets so tired of conquering and just decides to set up a castle in the pocket dimension of Limbo. And from there he has had run-ins with the Avengers, but he's less aggressive and hateful towards the Avengers than all the other Kang variants. He's more sort of doing things for his own gain. And since Loki season 1 director Kate Herron revealed that He Who Remains is not MCU's Immortus despite similarities in their characters and attire, it is quite likely that we have yet to see Immortus proper in the MCU. And we'll likely see him in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, as Kang's life from his childhood to his most oldest self will probably be explored. And don't be surprised if we end up seeing Immortus actually helping Team Ant-Man in that movie, considering that Immortus has faced off against variants of himself in the past. And last but certainly not least, we have the Kang variant known as Mr. Gryphon, the CEO of Kang Enterprises with a Q. Mr. Gryphon is actually secretly a Kang variant who gets trapped in our time of the 21st century and can't get home because for some reason there just isn't a time machine around. This was really weird because there's like a time machine around every corner where I live. It's like a time machine at Dunkin' Donuts. So he just decides to stay in our time period and do his conquering the old-fashioned way through the evil power of capitalism, and plots his nefarious schemes of conquest while pretending to be a nice CEO man. Never trust a CEO, especially a CEO that goes into space in a dick rocket. Jeff. And with the Kang logo showing up on Avengers Tower in the void, Mr. Gryphon has now shot up as the top most likely buyer of Avengers Tower that we hear about in Spider-Man Homecoming. And since Homecoming and Far From Home have both hinted out new things coming for Avengers Tower, I very much anticipate to see a Mr. Gryphon debut in Spider-Man No Way Home. But those are all the Kangs of note. Which Kang variant are you guys the most excited for? You gotta let me know in the comment section below, my nerd babies, because I love hearing from you. Which Kang do you want Marvel to bring? But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to follow me at MasterTainment on Twitter and Instagram if you guys want to see me post some weird shit. But most importantly, follow New Rockstars wherever we are, especially on YouTube. And when you do, make sure to hit the notification bell so you get notifications whenever we upload dope shit, which is 24/7. Make sure to hit up newrockstarsmerch.com so you can get cool shirts like this Black Widow shirt and our Loki inspired merch as well. Some of our stuff is not going to be there forever, so be sure to go there. there ASAP. Things are getting pruned. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys later. I love you. Goodbye.